Hello, good evening. Our show is Spiritual Exploration, and I'm Christine Schiavone, your host. Tonight we're going to explore the spirituality of belly dance, and we're going to go into its origins and why it's a spiritual dance. And with me to help us learn all these things are two lovely ladies and a very nice gentleman. To my right, I'd like to introduce Helena. And to my far right, we have Iszabella. And on my left is L'janan. And Helena and Iszabella are going to explain the origins of belly dance. And it's news to me that there are different kinds of belly dance from different parts of the world. And L'janan is here, and he will accompany them with his drums and his tambourines. And we're going to have a very interesting show, I'm sure. Welcome, ladies. Welcome, L'janan. It's very nice of you all to be here tonight. You've come all the way from Reading, Pennsylvania, it's my understanding.
That's correct.
And that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get started right away with talking about the origins of the belly dance. Could you tell me, where did it all begin?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say about belly dance is it's a popular misconception that belly dance is one dance.
Uh-huh.
And belly dance is, like you had mentioned a little bit earlier, from many different regions. There's Moroccan, and there's Romani, and there is Egyptian, Lebanese, Turkish, and many more that I'm sure I'm leaving out. And depending on what region the dance is from, the costuming change, the movements change, the music changes, the instruments change. So there's a lot of information that we'd like to share tonight. We'll only be able to touch on a small portion of it. Really, it is said that the gypsies helped to spread the dance form, that they have come from India, that they had rooted themselves in 3 different directions. And gypsy is actually not a proper word to call a lot of them. Gypsy has a bad connotation, like getting gypped in line.
Oh,
it has
that's where
negative...
gypsy came from, huh?
Well, it has that connotation.
I see.
There's different factions of gypsies, and they view how they want to be called as often inherent to that faction. I've also heard that the word gypsy came when they started migrating into Europe. They said they were from Egyptia, and hence gypsy. But through the ages, they were so persecuted that gypsy did not have a positive connotation or name. So.
And I think in some places today it still doesn't.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
So consequently, there's quite a few factions that like to be referred to as Rom.
The Rom, the Dom, and the Lom. And I could be mispronouncing them because, everyone has accents when they say it. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to understand if it's just their accent.
And they are changes. A very closed
group of people,
yes, definitely. Uh-huh. Definitely very close. Very hard to really know what their traditions and what their likes and dislikes are. So some actually prefer to be, some don't mind the gypsy terminology. They would prefer that as opposed to some other groups, preferred name.
So where did it all start, though? Was any one particular country responsible for its origins, or did it come about simultaneously in different places?
I think we did a lot of research on this, and like Helena said, the gypsies were credited with bringing a lot of the dance from northern India across Europe, following, I believe it was the Ottoman Empire, through, and then they split. Some went into Egypt, and some went more north into Europe. Egypt, I do believe. You might want to take it from there.
Belly dance is a dance of life. A lot of individuals think that belly dance is for men or promiscuous or things like this.
For their entertainment.
Right.
Right. There are people who do that.
But belly dance is a dance of life, and it originated in a lot of different regions differently, and its origins are speculated across the board. And we've brought a lot of books with us today just to give you a small sampling of the information available, and they talk about the different origins of the different groups of people and different ideologies of where the dance has begun.
All right, let's show what books that you have with you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, this one is a history of gypsies, and I believe
There's another book it's a little bit more current.
Hold it up. Okay, camera 2 right there.
And it's called,
Right. Yeah.
there is
ahead.
another book out called Bury Me Standing. It's by Iszabella Fonseca.
And very popular.
These two I use to reference the information contained in that book.
I see. Okay, and then you have other books over here.
I do. The
This-
top one is very much about Turkish Oriental dance and the dance in
Oriental
Turkey.
belly dance.
In Turkey.
Okay, and then we have,
That's Sacred Women's Sacred Dance, and that's about the origins of the dance of life, which is belly dance. But more than that.
and we have, last but not least, Looking for Little Egypt.
Right. And, there's a lot of speculation as to who Little Egypt was and where she originated from, and this book begins the journey of how they began to discover who Little Egypt was. And I'm not going to ruin it for you, but it has a very interesting ending.
Well, Little Egypt now is a very famous belly dancer, right?
I can't talk to you about that, or I'll ruin the ending of the book.
Oh, really? Okay, well, okay. The origins of belly dance come from, though, then very many countries that are more or less on the other side of the world, right?
Right. Now, the Americans have made changes and alterations to the dance that we'll talk about also. Let me start with the idea of the harems, or harems, as some pronounce it, in Egypt. A lot of individuals thought that the ladies in the harems were promiscuous with the prince or king or sultan. But in fact, the sultan had a first wife, and he'd have a second favored wife, and he might have a third favored wife. And he might spend a night with each of the ladies, but it is thought that the more women that you have, the more wealth you have, like goats. I'm sorry to say that, but it's very similar to that idea, where they would collect them by skin color and hair color and body shape, and the more women they had displayed their wealth. But, that's quite a few women that would be sitting around all day with nothing to do. And so they entertained themselves through the art of the dance, both with music and musical instruments and dance movements. And obviously the ladies who had been there longer knew more. And so the younger ladies coming in would then latch on to the elder women, and they would learn the dance of life through those individuals.
And these ladies didn't mind all being connected to one man.
Oh, I don't know that part at all. I just know that's where the dance worked in the harems.
But they just hung around all day, and to have something to do, they would teach each other belly dancing.
Right. It's not as if the ladies in the harem would even be shared with anyone outside.
That's what I mean.
Now, if the sultan had a party and invited special guests inside, you might be graced with the presence of one of the dancers, for your coming, but you wouldn't be
Otherwise,
allowed
they just belonged to
in.
the sultan. That was it.
Right.
So, in other words, he would exhibit his wealth by having all of these ladies around that he was able to keep and support.
Right.
And that's how he showed how wealthy he was.
Right. And the dance itself is very much like yoga, so it takes a good couple years even for your body to accept or adapt to moving in a certain way.
And breathing in a certain way.
And so that's why, as a new dancer, it's important to learn from the elder dancers because, and to practice and stay at the practice of the dance, because in that you'll learn the tips and the tricks and the the discipline behind the dance besides the art. That's what makes it an art.
I see. Now, as you said, the spirituality of it is because they called it a dance of life, meaning that it shows that the person is alive and able to do these things.
Even deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the actual movement of the belly dance will help with childbirth. So there's a very definite physiological reason for it too. There are a lot of dancers that dance all the way through their
Pregnancies?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and it does help with the actual process of childbirth and recovery.
I'll bet. I'll bet
Yes.
it does, I'm sure.
But again, you got to learn the control and the proper function as opposed to just learning how to shimmy. So,
I see what you mean.
yeah.
Yes.
Right, and actually a lot of the movements did simulate life. In the Gypsy region, they said there was a wise woman of the group, and the wise woman was pretty well learned, if you know what I mean. She had a lot of experience with the males in the Gypsy group. And so they would pull the wise women of the group in to a young bride's night before her wedding. And through the dance, teach her what would be expected in flirting, like when you do some of the eye movements. Some of the belly movements would be childbirth, as Iszabella has stated. And then the shimmies would be the conclusion of the wedding night.
I see.
Yes. So through movements, and there's a lot of Romani gypsy gestures and things done too for the dance of life. Skirt washing is one where they take their skirt and they wash it around. The one saying that I'm hungry is one hand slicing somewhat a part of the stomach. This is a hungry gesture. So through the dance, they even had life gestures.
Gestures that told a story and that made statements. Sort of like almost the hula in Hawaii.
Not quite as detailed.
No.
A little more earthy, as opposed to hula. Hula is a gorgeous dance, but it gets very detailed, and there's more to it. With the gypsies, it's very it's very passionate, very earthy.
I see. And L'janan, you play the instruments that the girls will dance by.
Yeah, I play the drums that give them the rhythms for their movements.
I see. So is that a particular kind of drum that you have there?
Well, there are a couple different kinds of drums. I just want to describe them to you a little bit. They were talking about the spirituality of the dance. So there's a spirituality to the drums also. It seems, based on research, that the earliest drums were made from devices that were used to harvest grain. They were used to sift. And what they did is, instead of sifting, they put a head on it. And there were early pictures around various places in the Middle East and the Mediterranean of women in procession holding drums like this as part of their ceremonies and rituals. There's a woman by the name of Lane Redman who has documented this in her book, When the Drummers Were Women. And in particular, she talks about a particular kind of feminist spirituality called the bee goddess or the bee princess. And they celebrated the feminine in life, the fecundity of life, the birthing of life, and things like that. And they have processions, pictures of women in procession holding frame drums like this. Another kind of drum from the Middle East is not based on a frame. It's based on a goblet shaped like this.
That's interesting.
And there are shapes like this from Egypt and Turkey in particular. And most of the time they're played across your knee, although they could be also played between your legs. So those were the two kinds of main drums. One's based on frames and one's based on goblets. And for those of your audience who are interested in Celtic spirituality, you'll notice that the large frame drum is similar to the Celtic bowron, which was used in ceremonies in the Celtic eras.
Interesting. And what about the tambourines now?
Well, this is a particular kind of small frame drum that they used in Egypt. This was called a rick, which is R-I-Q. It's got 5 sets of heavy jingles, and you can play it with rhythm, but also jingles. This drum is a more modern creation, similar to a tambourine as you mentioned, but it's not made just to play like a tambourine like we would do in jazz bands or rock bands. It's actually a drum that has a jingle sound associated with it.
Wow.
In the Mediterranean, they had drums like this with jingles. They had drums with bells. They have huge, 20-pounders with heavy jingles in Morocco, for example, called the muzhar. So there are a wide variety of drums. Like Helen was saying, different places have dance, different places had drums. So there are lots of styles, different ways of drumming, ethnic ways to play in Eastern Europe or North Africa and the Middle East and India, places like that. All had different kinds of drums based on what they wanted to produce for the sound.
Oh, it's very interesting. Wow, yeah. I'm sure they produce all kinds of different sounds,
Yes.
which I'm sure we'll be hearing.
Yes.
Oh, would one of you ladies like to do a demonstration for us?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I guess one thing we didn't touch on. Okay, my style is a Americanized version of several styles. like we would in this area, we have in this country, it's a melting pot. Consequently, the dance became also a fusion. So my style, even though I started out in Egyptian Turkish cabaret, I have discovered that I really enjoy a more tribal style, which was developed here, which is a combination of not just the traditional dance styles in belly dance, but also a little of flamenco, some little, I don't get into it, but some of the girls do more of an African tribal or very contemporary movements to it. I put a little bit more gypsy into it. And one thing that Americanized gypsy dancing does is skirt dancing. That is something, so if you see me pick up my skirt and dance with it, that is something that is not Rom, Lom, Dom, or gypsy. They would not touch their skirts. But we call it that because we use the big skirts for a purpose. And it looks really cool.
I'm sure. Well, let's see how cool it looks.
Okay, we'll see what we do here.
Okay. Wonderful. That was really interesting. Tell me about your costume a little bit now.
Alrighty. Well, the skirt, of course, is for it. One thing wondrous about dressing like a gypsy, you don't have to match.
That's what they call it, gypsy, right?
Exactly. The bigger the skirt, the more spin. You do layer often. So there's usually one or two skirts underneath. Always. Ooh. I forgot. Always wear pantaloons.
Pantaloons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those
Especially
are those
with-
like puffy.
Yes. So they'd be basically anything that would cover the leg. So as far as the top, I do a lot of Renaissance fairs. Well, we all do. Our group for the last few years is Tribe Yanasimi, or as part of New World Gypsy. And consequently, I've adopted the bodice to fit my needs. So consequently, it works really well for what I do. And but in tribal, a lot of the girls will wear cholis, and they can be made from modern fabrics, stretch velvet, cottons, to very antique Afghani tapestries, Indian sari material. So it is a combination of different materials, and it all depends on the dancer. Hence, that's why a lot of the belly dance that is called American Tribal is very fusion in the costuming as well.
In other words, there's a little of this and a little of that.
Yeah. And there is a lot of, especially the young girls, they even take tribal belly dance into a Gothic style, which is a very unique, beautiful styling, but it's very contemporary, and you can see the belly dance in it, but they add a lot to it with a lot of contemporary dance moves. But with our styling, Helena also has a costume very similar to what we wear when we do Renaissance fairs.
Oh, you do them together?
Yeah, we all do.
Oh, great.
Actually, that's how, well, we knew each other previous to that, but we met L'janan at our first Renaissance fair, and we just started traveling around.
Oh, that's great. Well, it sounds like you put a nice group together.
Yeah, there's in total we've got about 8.
Yeah?
So, and we do not just dance and music, but we get silly. And we drop into accent. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Iszabella has an accent of her own, so.
Oh, well, cute.
But Helena's costuming is a lot different.
Well, in a little while we'll get to see that. But before we do, tell me about some of the other items that are on the table here. You have what looks like a dervish. This is like it's not a.
Actually, it's referred. Scimitar is the most common name for it. It's actually used for all the curved blade swords. They use the word scimitar. It's actually a contemporary design. The original designs were a little straighter. They still had a curved edge, and they only had one sharpened edge, which is what makes this different. But a lot of the dance swords used in belly dance are not sharpened. If you want to, you can just very gently touch that, and the edge.
Yeah, it's not.
This is not dulled to a very deep degree. I dulled it a little bit, but for the most part, it's still sharpened steel.
Was this made for the purpose of dancing with it, or was it made for the purpose of going to war with it?
They are designed after the original Turkish swords, the scimitars.
That were used?
I believe they were referred to as back swords because they only had one sharpened edge.
Uh-huh.
So I unfortunately don't remember there's a Turkish and there's an Egyptian sword that are very similar, and they have the curved blade and one sharpened edge. And these were modeled after it, but then when you got into a lot of the fantasy swords, they started just sharpening up the edges and making it a little more dramatic looking, hence the modern scimitar.
Interesting, interesting.
But we in the tribal, every dancer will have their favorite swords. Some girls will like the real shiny ones. I tend to go for the ones that look really like worn and used. So I've got like 4 of them now, I guess.
And you do dances where you're using the sword to...
Oh, yes. I will be doing one a little later.
Okay, very good. Excellent, excellent.
Ethnically speaking, the swords were used in men's dance throughout the regions in the Middle East. The women rarely danced with the swords, and the men did simulated fight scenes with the swords. The only time a woman might dance with a sword in the Middle East was if they were making a mockery of the men's dance at the time. So,
Did they get into big trouble for that?
I'm not certain. They're probably not alive to tell us.
Right? Probably, yeah.
But here in America, we do a lot of adaptations to the dance, and it's caught on, some of them overseas, and some of them, we call it American cabaret. And it's usually used to break up portions of the dance and give like a new atmosphere or environment or aura about the dance.
Interesting, interesting. And what are these little, they look like canes.
That's exactly what they are.
And they are canes, and they're used in the dance also.
Yeah, they are based in a traditional Egyptian dance. Helena does it a little more often than what I do. I do more of a tribal style with mine. Mine is the one that looks like it belongs to a gypsy, and hers is a nice shiny one.
Yeah, they come in a natural wood color, as Iszabella said, for use if you want an earthier look or Renaissance fair, something like this. But the wrapped ones, and this is just a shiny wrap, sometimes they have like a sequined wrap that goes around it with a little piece hanging off. And it's used in traditional folkloric Egyptian dances, but we also incorporate it into the cabaret dances.
Interesting. And what are those spoons for? They look like serving spoons.
Well,
And
maybe I want to touch on the Zills first.
Okay.
No, actually, I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah. These are Turkish spoons.
Uh-huh.
Were they?
Folkloric dance.
Yeah, it's basically in the folkloric. So most people that are familiar with belly dance are familiar with the finger cymbals or the zills. However, in a lot of the Ram dance, they'll use the same rhythms, but they'll use the spoons.
Almost like a castanet.
Very similar, but played totally different because you hold the bottom one with your thumb and the top one's doing, well, castanets do very similar. They're more dangling in the air, but similar sound.
Right.
similar sound.
Right.
So, and it's a little more subtle sound. It's not, they're not quite as loud as what you would get out of the Zill. So it's just another form of
And this
music.
here is...
This is a hip scarf, and we would use this. A lot of the beginner belly dancers would use it, and we use them from time to time too, depending, just to dress up an outfit or to go out for a night on the town.
Okay, why not, right?
Right, but oops, wait, I have it the wrong way. What
very
happens is it's
pretty.
a great tool besides dressing up an outfit, and sometimes by putting on just a little extra something. You know how when a woman puts on lipstick, suddenly she feels a little bit more dressed up?
Yeah, and a
By-
little more feminine.
Right, by
Right.
putting this on, you suddenly feel a little bit more prepared for the dance.
Ah.
But besides that, it's a great tool because when a dancer's first learning how to dance, sometimes their hips move one stronger than the other, and you hear not a symmetrical rhythm, but when they move together, you'll hear,
Right, yes,
you know.
yes.
And then they'll know how hard they're moving their hips because you might hear a lighter sound or a harder sound. So it's a great tool for those who beginner belly dance. And it wraps around the back, and this one you would tie loosely in a knot in the front. And actually, we brought this for you as a gift.
Oh, wow, thank you. Nice. Oh, beautiful. I
So
will
it's
wear it.
It's a beautiful velvet with the
Wow,
coins
I
on
wasn't
it.
expecting that. Thank you so much.
Sure, since you brought it up.
All right.
But we also have the zills here, and these are very, very important. Zil is the Turkish word for these. It's an instrument played with the dance. Sagat, or sagat, depending if I'm saying that correctly by the Egyptian standard, is the Egyptian name for the zills. Please excuse me if I've said that incorrectly. And what happens is these are Saroyans, and there are many other brands, turquoise, and a few others. But what happens, you wear these on your thumb and you wear them on your middle finger right to the first knuckle. And depending on the region, they're played differently. Egyptians, I'm told, play them to the drum beat. The Turkish, I'm told, play them 4 different ways: to the tempo, to the melody, to the drum beat, and then to the dance move itself.
Are you going to be using them now in your dance?
I will use them to dance with. Sure.
Very good.
Did you want to
Go ahead.
do melody? Oh wait, let me quick talk about costuming. I'm right here. We usually like to wear a thobe or a cover-up robe. It's proper when you're walking around, simply because you're very exposed in the costume, and we ask that everyone who's just starting the dance form, if you're in costume and you're out in the public just walking around, to cover up. It creates an air of mystery to your dance because no one sees what you're wearing right away. And the second part is it'll keep it from getting dirty if you're going to spill anything accidentally. But the third thing is it helps you to become more approachable so people can ask you about the dance, so you can dispel different theories or thought processes they might have about it ahead of time. And then what I'm wearing right now is a classic cabaret piece. It's called bedla. It's a skirt, a hip belt and a bra top. And then we have the nice chiffon skirts, but they're also made in satin and other materials. I'm wearing harem pants. I'll show you when I get out front. That's just a little bit of a leg covering so we don't expose too much. And then we have the veils also. And so this is an American cabaret costume. What's interesting, as I just quick share this with you, is that the reason why belly dance is such a misnomer is because the bellies were always covered in the Middle East.
Ah,
For a very long time, religion influenced the dance form.
really?
So a lot of times people wore like shirts with bodices or vests and more like pillbox looking hats and the very what did you call them, pantaloons, bloomer like pants,
Gauzy coats.
gauzy coats. They're long coats with long sleeves. They didn't bear flesh. It was the dance and the coins that they had on themselves and the beads